President Biden is providing new details on some of the administration's foreign policy plans. In his first formal news conference since taking office, the president discussed U.S. relations with China and Russia. He also gave an indication of when he might be prepared to bring back troops from Afghanistan, the nation's longest military conflict.
The answer is that it's going to be hard to meet the May 1 deadline, just in terms of tactical reasons. It's hard to get those troops out. So what we've been doing, what I've been doing, and what Secretary Blinken has been doing, we've been meeting with our allies, those other nations that have NATO allies who have troops in Afghanistan as well. And if we leave, we're going to do so in a safe and orderly way.
For more, let's bring in CBS News senior foreign affairs correspondent and Face the Nation moderator, Margaret Brennan. Hi there, Margaret. So this week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveled to Brussels to meet with NATO and EU officials. His stated goal is repairing relations with U.S. allies. One issue on the agenda, the 20-year war in Afghanistan. Now, President Biden addressed this on Thursday. What did he say, Margaret, about how the U.S. is working to get its troops out, and what is the timeline?
Well, President Biden said it would be tough to make that May 1st deadline that's on the calendar because of the deal that the Trump administration struck with the Taliban. President Biden basically said today the U.S. is not going to be able to meet that deadline, said it would be tough, and he cited logistical concerns. It's more than logistical concerns. This is a big decision for President Biden to have to make here. The fear is that if the U.S. withdraws too quickly, that it could create a vacuum that would allow for the Taliban to really step up its attacks on the established government of Afghanistan, and that the country would devolve into civil war. That would be heartbreaking after 20 years of the United States spilling blood and treasure with the hope of having a country stable enough to leave behind and something to show for it. So he really emphasized that the first foot forward will be a diplomatic one. He talked about efforts being made through Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and an international effort to try to broker some kind of interim agreement. He also, it was interesting because President Biden, he gave the wrong name of the president of Afghanistan, but he seemed to still be aware of the negotiations and the strategy that his administration is laying out. But this is going to be a very key decision, because if the Taliban steps up violence to protest the fact that the U.S. did not withdraw by May 1st, this could mean that U.S. troops once again are going to be targeted. So the 2,500 U.S. troops who are there are what we are talking about. And whether it becomes another crisis or this is just another drawn-out decision, the bottom line is President Biden said he doesn't think U.S. troops will be able to stay there for much longer. He said he had a hard time imagining they'd be there in 2022.
Well, let's talk about North Korea. What is the thinking behind why the country launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast Wednesday? And where is the Biden administration on its North Korea policy?
They don't have one yet. In fact, that's what the White House is saying, that they're getting close to having a North Korea policy. They're working on it, along with some other big policies that are being crafted having to do with major challenges in Asia. But President Biden was clear today. He said, yes, North Korea is the biggest foreign policy challenge that will face his administration, just as it was for the prior administration. So this is something that he said they're still figuring out how to proceed. They hope they can have diplomatic talks. He didn't, for instance, shut the door to the options that could be presented, like resuming direct negotiations. He said, we're trying to figure out a diplomatic way out of this. So for North Korea to have gone ahead with these tests, North Korea had said in the wake of that visit through Asia, remember, through South Korea and Japan, the Secretaries of State and Defense just finished a tour a few days ago. And for North Korea to do this on the tail end was a matter of protest against the U.S. resuming military exercises with our treaty ally, South Korea. So this is North Korea saying, don't don't think we don't get a vote here, and we are going to protest the fact that you are still on the Korean Peninsula. But this isn't a massive escalation, and that's how President Biden framed it today, saying what was tested, the type of missile that was carried out, is something that is a violation of UN and international law. So he said there would be some kind of consequence, but he didn't ratchet up the pressure.
Well, also in his news conference Thursday, President Biden brought up China's human rights abuses, specifically against its Muslim minorities and the people of Hong Kong. How does the Biden administration intend to both work with China and hold China to account?
This is another one of these massive policy decisions that the White House says we're getting there. We're still working on the bigger framing of the policy, but President Biden did say today, as he said frequently on the campaign trail, how he knows Xi Jinping, the president of China, is someone truly to be reckoned with. That he is very much an authoritarian and he is very smart. He talked about that. But he also said that human rights are going to be back in the forefront of U.S. policymaking. Now, to be clear, the United States has said this is genocide, that these are concentration camps that are being set up with the Muslim minorities, Turkic groups, mainly Uyghurs. So this week we did see U.S. sanctions put on to respond to the fact that this is still happening. And we did hear Europeans and Canadians join the U.S. in that protest with sanctions. So the world is somewhat aligned in at least moral objection to what China is doing, but these sanctions haven't stopped China from these repressive policies. So it's unclear whether that is possible, but as a matter of principle, President Biden said they wouldn't sacrifice one for the other. That was something that the Trump administration was accused of doing. For instance, holding back on sanctions related to the Uyghurs in order to get a trade deal. He said he wouldn't do that.
So, Margaret, a new episode of your podcast, Facing Forward, drops on Friday. What can we expect?
It does, Elaine. This one's going to be kind of fun, I think, because we talk about what is typically the summer blockbuster movie season with the CEO of IMAX. And as you know, that's really an immersive experience when you go into a movie theater.
Yes.
And I don't know the last time you were in one. I wouldn't go into one right now for safety reasons. That's the way I think. But parts of this country, New York City, LA, have reopened movie theaters to partial capacity. And we talked to Rich Gelfand about that, what that means for his business and what they're seeing happen in Asia. And what he said is that it is positively booming in Japan and in China. And he is predicting that that is what's going to happen here, that people are just so fed up with sitting on their couch that even though streaming is so convenient, that he does think people will return to theaters. So you'll hear his case and his argument for some of the movies that might convince you to do it. I'll still continue streaming from home.
No, you're right. It's been a long time. I think the last time a few years ago, back in D.C., actually, at the IMAX there at the Smithsonian. So, all right. Can't wait to hear it. Margaret Brennan. Margaret, always great to see you. Thank you.
Great to be with you, Elaine.